Have you ever thought much about what it actually means to be happy? Like, what does that mean? And how do we achieve happiness? That's going to be our topic today on the Forever Fit with Carol Covino podcast. Hello, I'm your host, Carol Covino. I'm a fitness and health coach for women over the age of 40 who are struggling with perimenopausal and menopausal hormonal symptoms. I help them to lose the body fat for good and to strengthen and tone their bodies, regardless of what stage of life they're in. So, happiness is one of those vague terms. I think it means different things to different people. When I was a little girl, and in fact, I kept this belief into my teens, and I don't think it's that uncommon, but I would wait for the happily ever after. I always thought that there would be a moment in time where from that point forward, I would be happy. And it's a childish thought, I know, but I do think it's common to feel that way, especially as a little girl. You're growing up hearing all of the fairy tales, all of the happily ever after. And my childhood being the way it was, as challenging as it was, I had a tendency to want to escape into those fairy tales. And I remember feeling like happiness would suddenly be a blanket that covered my whole body, my whole being. And from that point forward, everything would be fine. Well, it didn't take me long to figure out that simply does not happen. Yes, we have moments of joy, moments of happiness, but it's not a constant. It comes, it goes. Our moods ebb and flow, just like the ocean and the waves ebb and flow. And it's totally normal to have those changes. But as I was getting closer to this holiday season, I was thinking, okay, what do people struggle with in and around their health during the holiday season? And there's more to health simply than nutrition and exercise. Of course, that those are the main components. Without those things, we don't have health or fitness. But we also have to consider our mental health. And as I have worked with over 1,000 women now, and I've experienced my own issues, my own transformation, my own transition into menopause and beyond, I've realized that mental health is a bigger piece than I had given it credit for. I was so focused on the physicality of, okay, how am I going to look in this swimsuit? How am I going to look in this competition? How much muscle can I put on? And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. Those were components of fitness, but I wasn't often considering my mental health. So as we approach the holidays, whatever your belief system, however you celebrate, this is generally a time where we're consuming more food. It's generally a time that we're around people more as far as friends and family, office parties, things like that. So, of course, we have all the usual temptations. I recently read, I believe it's 8 to 15 pounds that Americans put on during the holiday season, starting right after Halloween. That tends to flip the switch with the Halloween candy, continuing on into Thanksgiving and then Christmas and then New Year's. And it's just kind of this snowball effect. And I could give you lots of tips on how to manage this. And there are tips you can find just about anywhere. So I wanted to take this a little bit broader with how I can potentially help you or reframe things for you, because I think that's really important. We need to sometimes reframe how we're looking at something. So the holidays can also be a time where perhaps we are having a holiday where it's our first time that we're not celebrating it with a loved one. I remember when my parents passed away within 6 months of one another, those first holidays, in particular, Thanksgiving, Christmas, were difficult for me because I was missing my parents. Even though I was a grown woman with my own kids and husband, I was missing my mom and dad. And it was a difficult time for me. And it was hard for me to set that aside and to be joyful and to be happy with my kids. Perhaps some of you might have lost a spouse or gotten a serious life-threatening diagnosis. Maybe you're estranged from family members, or like me, you have a son or daughter in the military that is away from you this holiday season, and it's not quite the same without that family member sitting in that chair. This can affect our mental health. This can affect our ability to be happy. But there are some real tangible things that we can do to preserve not only our physical health so that we're not gaining that 8 to 15 pounds, whatever it may be, and we're keeping our mental health in check because the two just go hand in hand. If someone is depressed, they're blue, they just have a very low mood or affect, then the tendency to put on weight or to comfort themselves with food is going to be greater. It's going to be a greater tendency to do that. It's just how we are as human beings to kind of reach for those things that are comforting. And for many of us, that might be reaching for food. And of course, it's everywhere around the holidays. But even if you're not struggling with your mood per se, there's still little ways that we can struggle with our mental health. Perhaps it's the feeling of a letdown. So whenever I take a vacation, I'm so much better about this now. But I've always struggled with that feeling blue when I come back off vacation because there's all this anticipation of where we're going, especially when we went to Europe. We were so excited for weeks ahead of time and so excited the night before we couldn't sleep, like little kids on Christmas morning. So there was this anticipation. And then when the trip is done, it's like, oh, there's this letdown feeling. Like I said, I've gotten so much better at handling that, seeing the blessing of the time, enjoying my time, but also enjoying getting back to my daily routine. The same thing can happen with the holidays. We can have a little bit of a letdown, even if we seem like most of the time we're not under stress, or most of the time we do feel happy, we can experience a letdown. And this can come in the form of perhaps you're the type of person that buys tons of gifts for your kids, your grandkids. You just love to gift on people. And then you feel a little disappointment. Maybe you didn't get the response you wanted or the special gift that you had for somebody. It just didn't have the wow that you anticipated. Or you're looking forward to the day with family, but then when it's over, you feel that kind of blah feeling. I think we all go through that. So there are some things that we can do to keep our mood elevated during the holidays, which in turn can lower stress, improve sleep, and then, of course, make it less likely to put on weight. Because if we're under stress, we're unhappy, we're dealing with past traumas or grief or whatever is in our life at that time, or even small things, it can affect our sleep. And when we don't sleep, we are hungrier the next day. We're hangry. We want to snack. We have trouble with those hunger hormones going out of control because we didn't get the sleep we need. And the stress plays into this. Of course, if we're stressed, we don't sleep as well. And hormones can go out of balance, in particular cortisol, which is a problem for women over the age of 40, 50, and beyond because cortisol levels begin to dysregulate. They can be too high, they can be too low. People don't often talk about that, but cortisol can be too low. It's a complex hormone that we need. We need it to survive. So having cortisol that's in the tank is not what we want. We don't want it so low that it's well below the norm, nor do we want it continually elevated. Either one of those ways puts stress upon the body. It affects our ability to regulate blood sugar, blood glucose. It affects insulin. So just keeping in mind that it can be too high, too low. The other thing that can happen with cortisol is it will be high when it's supposed to be low, which is at night, generally at night, or it can be low when it's supposed to be higher, which is the morning. I've actually had that flip scenario at times when I'm under stress. So there's all kinds of dysregulation that can happen. And with that can come something that's called the cortisol belly. This is particularly linked up with menopause and with high cortisol levels. And the high cortisol levels cause a higher blood sugar level, higher glucose level. And then, of course, insulin's going to want to come in to mop up that mess. And you just get this cascade of hormones that are not working in our favor. So let's talk about managing that stress. So, first and foremost, of course, you want movement, but I don't want you to stress around the holidays. You're going to be busy. You're going to be shopping, running errands, and just doing more than what you normally do. For most of us, that's going to be the thing. And time is going to be very precious over the next few weeks. So, find ways to get your strength training in first. That's first in a quicker way. Perhaps you're going to group your exercises in a circuit by choosing 5 exercises and performing each one without stopping. And then you rest and you do it again for 3 to 5 rounds and you're done in 30 minutes. Perhaps you're going to work out at home and use your bands and your dumbbells. Just try to be very efficient with your time. But I'm going to urge you not to skip the exercise sessions. I think that's a big mistake because then you're on that downward spiral. And I personally feel better emotionally when I get that workout in, when I, sling a few weights around and I get the blood pumping, or I do a short hit session, or I take a nice walk, I feel better. You want to move. And rather than focusing on longer sessions, just try to get it in, even if it's 30 minutes, even if you're just doing 3 sets of something. Then get as much movement as you can. Now, that should be easy if we're out running errands, we're walking, we're at the mall, we're at the grocery store. Should be a perfect opportunity to get those steps in. Now, they used to say 10,000 steps, and they still do, but it's actually kind of an arbitrary number. The number is 8,000 and up. And when you get past 10,000, the benefits really compound. There's a lot of benefits. One benefit, and we're talking movement, we're not talking formal exercise. We're not talking getting on an exercise bike. We're talking about getting your steps in and moving throughout the day, walking the dogs, walking down to the mailbox, just getting up and moving, washing dishes, doing the shopping, not sitting for prolonged lengths of time. So there are benefits there with blood glucose, blood sugar level. So if you eat a meal or you eat something that you're like, I shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have had that extra piece of pie, shouldn't have had that treat, that fudge that somebody brought into work. I remember how that used to be back in the day when I worked, even in fitness and personal training, people brought things into the break room that were not so good for us. I remember those days, and it can be hard. It's right there in your face, and maybe you're tired, and that tiredness can lead to hunger. So let's say that does happen. And rather than beat yourself up, try to find an opportunity to move, to take a brisk walk for 20 minutes. If you have a treadmill in your home, walk on it. If you can get up and take the stairs at work up and down a few times, do that. You are going to get rid of some of that excess blood glucose so it's not hanging around and causing these overly high insulin overly high insulin levels. So movement is key. Exercise, strength training play into movement. So movement is your non-exercise activity. It includes your formal exercise activity and of course your strength training. So all of that is movement together. And the key is we don't want to just sit all day and then move for 30 minutes. We want enough movement throughout the day. Wearing a device can help you keep track of that. They're not 100% accurate, but it can at least give you some idea of where you're at. So have a little game with yourself. How many days can you hit 10,000 steps? How high can you bring it? Can you do 50,000 steps in a week? Maybe do it by a weekly goal and challenge yourself a little bit. That movement is going to improve blood glucose levels. And when you're improving blood glucose levels, you're releasing stress, you are just going to feel better overall. Next up, with happiness and health, I'm going to put those two together, is going to be our sleep. And I actually have some notes that I'm going to pull up here and share with you. I was putting together some notes for my VA, my virtual assistant. She helps me with some of my posting and putting things up. And I was going through some notes about improving sleep because it's one of the questions I get. But I recently was listening to the Huberman Lab, excellent podcast, highly suggested. They're long, but well worth it. And he did a whole episode on happiness. I'm not going to go through everything he talks about because he is a research scientist and in neurology, so he takes it pretty deep. But there was something that I found so simple and actionable that I thought this is really good to share with my audience. And this was in particular to sleep. But if you are not sleeping, you are less likely to feel that happiness. And I'm going to talk about what that term means a little bit later, but you're just less likely to use that word. You're less likely to smile. You're more likely to grimace or be a little grouchy. If we're not getting our sleep, we don't feel well. We're not energetic. So, a key to happiness can be quality sleep. There's just no way we can achieve a happy feeling within ourselves without that quality sleep. So, what can we do? So, this was via Huberman. Once again, if you want to check out the episode, he talked about exposing yourself to sunlight upon awakening. And that's something that's nothing new. I've heard that many times, and I give that advice to my clients. You don't want the sunglasses on, you want that early morning light, like within an hour, 30 minutes to an hour of waking up. Just kind of getting outside for just a few minutes, even if it's to have a cup of coffee. I know it's cold, but bundle up and give yourself a few minutes out there if you can, exposing yourself to that sunlight. So, what does that do for sleep? It's obvious what it does to wake us up because it's light. But what it does is it's going in line with your circadian rhythms. And I've been hearing quite a bit of research on even our cardiovascular health and the link to our circadian rhythms. People that tend to honor those rhythms and be in alignment with those rhythms and sleep at night and then, wake during the day, following those normal patterns, they do tend to have less cardiovascular incidents. And something I'm probably going to do a podcast in the future. I've been doing a lot of research on cholesterol and cardiovascular health. It's something that's interesting me because being 61, it's a risk factor. It's a number one risk factor for women and it's a number one for men. And so I believe it's something that needs to be addressed and not just looking at the hormonal pieces. So you expose yourself to this sunlight, but then you want to expose yourself to as much natural light during the day. Now, this could be opening your blinds. So, this is my office, and I come in here. It's quiet. I can work, and you can't see it, but right ahead of me is a nice window, good size window. And during the day, I get some beautiful light in here. So, I get some wonderful, soft morning light, and then I get a sunset. That comes through. In fact, I have to usually shut the blinds because it's too bright, and so this is an excellent place. My kitchen, I sometimes work in, that gets a lot of light too. I'm very big on light and having those curtains open. So you want that exposure as much as possible. And once again, this is to set the circadian rhythms, but you also want exposure to light, period. So sometimes you have dark, cloudy days. So expose yourself to the unnatural light as well during the day. Now, this is the daytime. Feel free to have those lights on overhead. Once again, setting the circadian rhythms. One final thing you can do at the end of the day, and there's actually been research on this, is and I'll link it in the show notes, the research study, so you can look it up. And once again, I got this through Huberman, so I did not fall upon the research by myself, but I thought it was really cool. So what it's finding is the benefit of exposing yourself to the sunset. So if you can actually get outside in the light during the sunset. And I know once again that's not always possible if you're working, if it's cold, and it can't be through a window. That's the thing. It needs to be actually outside. So it's not through a window, it's not through your car window. You're actually outside. And there is a great benefit then for later on in the evening. So it actually benefits how you're able to transition into the time of night where we're dimming the lights and we don't want that stimulus. We're bringing the stimulus down. So I will link to that research so you can go ahead and check it out and read it on your own. Then from 6 to 10, you want to dim the lights. I'm not telling you to walk around in total darkness, but keep them as dim as you can. Now, right now, I don't have them as dim as I can. It is, what time is it? As I record this podcast, it's 5:30. It's already dark. So I had to use my ring light or I'd be sitting here in the shadows. But I'm going to go through the house and start dimming the lights and really have them low, have the both fireplaces on that we have in our home, and then we have dimmer switches, which are very, very helpful for bringing that down. You can also bring down the light on your phone, your devices. I do that as well. I bring it down, and that also saves my battery. And I bring it down on my laptop if I'm needing to do a little work at night, which does happen from time to time, like tonight when I'm recording this podcast. Now, if it's summer, obviously you're not dimming lights at 6 o'clock. Here in New Mexico, it's staying light in the summer till about 8, maybe even later in June. So you'll want to adjust that. So it might be from 7 to 10 or 8 to 10, right around in there. You would have a shorter window. But in the winter months, it's going to be, 5 to 6, right when it starts to get dark, to 10 o'clock. You want to avoid the artificial bright light after 10 p.m. So once it's 10 p.m., artificial light should be gone, if at all possible. And I get it. Sometimes it's not possible if we have a deadline to make, we're working, maybe we're communicating with a family member on our phone. I get it. I run an online business. It's hard to stay off of my devices at night. It is because sometimes that's the only time that I have an opportunity to sit and catch up on people's messages, emails, and things like that. But from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., you will want to avoid the artificial bright light. Now, what if you need to get up and use the bathroom? Well, it's a little bit different. If you have a little flashlight, like I've had by my bed, I don't like to use my phone flashlight because then that means I'm looking at the time on my phone. And sometimes that really messes me up. And then the next night, I'll wake up at that exact same time. It's imprinted on my mind. And there's been some research on that as well. So I don't suggest using your phone to find your way to the bathroom. Have a little nightlight or just a little flashlight where it's just illuminating it in front of you. That's very different from light directly in your eyes that's harsh. So the reason that we're doing all this is that exposure to artificial light can have a negative impact on dopamine, causing lower mood and lower affect. We've all known people that, at least I have, where you're speaking to them, just everything's kind of, it's that kind of low mood, low voice, not much expression on the face, or maybe they don't smile much. I've known people like that. And, getting back to this definition of happiness, it's going to mean different things to different people. It's vague. It's something that we tend to think of as, oh, made me so happy to see my son when he comes home from the military. Makes me so happy to be with my family at Christmas. Those are easy things to express. But being happy on the daily is actually a little challenging. Now, there's some people that we've met these two that they're always up, that emotion is up, they're excited, they have a lot of energy. And I would venture to say smiling more and actually practicing this because a lot of times when you smile, your heart and your mood will follow that expression. And I don't mean fake your emotion, but finding opportunities to smile. Sometimes I'll find opportunities to smile when I'm alone, when I hear something on a podcast or I see something that's very sweet. I was at the gym and there's a gentleman there, a young man, so sweet, and he carries the bags of the older women that are headed into the uh, back changing rooms, usually to access the pool and do a pool class or sit in the sauna or some of those things. And he will carry those bags for him. And I always just, he doesn't see me, but I just stop and smile. It just makes me smile. So I think sometimes look someone in the eye and smile. And you might be surprised that mirroring back that you get. I know I have been at times where sometimes I'll just smile at somebody, even just someone I don't know, and you get that smile back. So I think happiness is something that we can practice on the daily and be aware of. I understand there is clinical depressions. There's various reasons that people become depressed, and I've had my times with it. Having had past unresolved trauma and some things that really interfered with my ability to experience that feeling of joy and happiness. I understand there's been times in my life like that, times I've had to actually take an antidepressant to get me through. And there's no shame in it. And I know you hear so many mixed things about this, like, well, you shouldn't take anything and everything should be natural. And I believe that this is once again on an individual basis. Someone is not in your body, in your skin, in your mind. And you have to make the decision once you have the information that's best for you. But I would venture to say that practicing happiness like you would practice any other habit or skill in your life could be very beneficial. My third and final thing is rather simple as well. And this is once again, it's a holiday tip, but it's a year-round tip. Find something you enjoy. Now, during the holidays, I know time is scarce, but there's got to be something that you personally enjoy. And it could be a hobby that you take a few minutes for, even if you're busy. You just say, okay, 30 minutes of maybe you like to sew, maybe you like to cook. Well, holiday season's perfect time to do the cooking. Uh, Maybe you enjoy playing tennis and you just take time out to play tennis once a week as you move through the holidays, as you're able to do so with the weather. Perhaps you just enjoy walking your dog, but you make time for this and it's so important. And then on top of that is finding something, not just finding something you enjoy, but maybe something that challenges you a little bit, I think adds to happiness because it adds to resiliency. It adds to emotional resiliency. When we learn something new, it could be a language, it doesn't even have to be something physical. It is very gratifying and it gives you confidence and is energizing in a sense because you're excited about this new thing. Perhaps you don't feel like you have time to do it during this holiday season, but what I would like you to do is step back and think of something that you would like to try. So I'm going to give you my example. I have recently taken up rucking. And if you're on my social media, either Facebook or Instagram, you will see me post about rucking. I post myself and my husband and my daughter went with us last weekend. I post the mountains, I post the rucksacks. So what in the heck is rucking? I've talked about it a little, but I'll go into it a little further. A good source to learn more is Go Ruck, R-U-C-K, Go Ruck. And I think it's .com. I'm not absolutely certain of that. That's where I got the supplies. And basically, it's a military pack. And then you have these flat steel weights that just slide down in there. Now, you cannot get the same benefit by just loading a regular backpack. The distribution of the weight isn't quite right. It doesn't have the same effect. So I'm going to urge you, if you decide to do this, to do it correctly, to order a ruck pack, order the weights, start light, and eventually you work up to about a third of your body weight. It's going to depend on if you've had any past injuries. It's going to depend on certain things, but start light and gradually work up. So you load your pack, and of course, it has additional weight because it's got your waters or your jacket or whatever you're carrying, gloves that you need this time of year because it's cold outside where I am. We were wrecking in the snow for the past 3 weeks. So I decided to do this. I actually heard it on Peter Attia's podcast. You know me and my podcast. And I thought, what the heck is that? And so I looked it up and I started doing my own research, and it has so many benefits and a very low injury rate, very low. It's good for bone density, particularly in women, because you're carrying that extra weight. It's a full body workout. You will feel it in your shoulders, your back. You will feel it in your legs, your glutes, your hamstrings. So it is a full body workout. You do not have to hike with the rucksack. You could simply walk the dogs. You could get on your treadmill. I've seen people use them for step ups at the gym. So you don't have to hike. I just have chosen to combine it with hiking because I love to hike and I wanted an extra challenge, and the rucksack gave me that. So my husband and I have taken it up. It's a skill, and we had to start using the hiking poles, which at first I was just completely ridiculous with. I could not handle these poles. It was very uncoordinated. They were going in all directions, knocking me in the face. Now I know how to handle my poles, handle my sack. It's a bit of a skill, and then you have to control the deceleration down the hill. So when you're coming down a steep hill, you've got a pack, and maybe there's a little bit of snowpack. You can't just go flying down the hill. You've got to be mindful of your steps and where you plant your feet and be careful. And it's a very good skill to have because what happens as people age, they fall. How do they usually fall? They're usually falling going down somewhere because they cannot stop. They lose that ability in the legs to decelerate. So you want that strength training, but you also want to train those fibers in such a way and train your mind because it's a mind thing. We lose a little bit of our ability to react quickly with each decade. So by challenging your mind with this, I can't just look up at the hills as I'm walking with my rucksack. I can't do that. I'll trip. So I've got to really plant my feet. I'm thinking the whole way up. And pretty soon hours have gone by. So that's my example of taking up something new, learning a new skill. It's making me feel very good physically and good about myself. When I challenge myself, I feel great. It is an uplifting thing for my mood. So I'm going to encourage you, even if you don't have time during the holidays, I want you to try to think of something that you can try new. And it doesn't have to be rucking, could be dancing, could be playing the guitar. I don't know. Find something new. And I would love it if you would pop into my Instagram, which is at Carol Covino Fitness, and share with me what you decided to learn new. And this will go a long way to increasing daily happiness because I feel part of my definition of happiness is there's a feeling of contentment and satisfaction in there. And of course, we're around our family, that's a contentment, but you can also get that same satisfaction from challenging yourself. So this holiday season, I want you to move. I want you to make a point of moving as much as you can. You can do this and getting that resistance training in, even if it's 3 times a week for 30 minutes. Let's do it. Let's stay consistent here. It's going to help with your mood. It's going to make you feel better about yourself, about even what you've eaten that day. No, you can't outrun a bad diet like they say, but you can improve your glucose disposal, your blood sugar disposal by having muscle on your body and by moving. So that is reality. You can improve those things. So if you did have that extra piece of pie, let's take a walk. Let's start to look at what we can do during the day and in the evening to improve our sleep. And it's not just a sleep routine. Okay, a sleep routine and a bath isn't going to do a whole lot. And I've made this mistake. Take the Epsom salt bath or the jacuzzi bath, and I've got this harsh light on over my head and I'm on my device in the bathtub. Okay, probably not the best way. And no wonder it didn't help my sleep. So you really want to think about light. I want you to think about light and getting in contact with those circadian rhythms. I could talk a little bit about eating according to those as well, but let's save that for another podcast. Maybe when we discuss intermittent fasting in the future, we can talk about that. And then the final thing is to find something you love or you would love to learn, and let's do it. Challenge yourself just a little bit, get outside your comfort zone. If you feel you don't have time to dive in now, I want you to put it in your calendar. I want you to take some steps. Like with me, when I made the decision with the rucking, I didn't start it right away because we were headed to Europe, but I bought everything we needed. So when we returned from Europe, there it was in packages, ready to go. I had made the commitment and spent the money. Well, before we wrap up, I want to tell you about a special program, very short, sweet, brief little program that I am running right after Thanksgiving, right? Perfect. Only 1 week. It's the holiday shred. And I actually ran this program in the past with fantastic results and feedback. Women really loved it. It's only a week. It includes workouts, it includes a meal plan and a grocery list, along with what you can do on the day to day. Now, the purpose of this isn't to gain a ton of muscle. That's not going to happen in a week. We know that isn't going to happen. And it's not even to lose a bunch of body fat because that's not going to happen in a week. But what it will help you with is you'll lose some weight, you'll lose some body fat in that week, but you're going to get yourself back on track after Thanksgiving. So if you overindulged, it kind of gives you that opportunity to get rid of that bloat. I don't know about you, but that's the worst part. It's not even the weight gain, it's like the bloating in my stomach. I can't stand it. Because let's face it, you go through Thanksgiving and maybe you have plans for Hanukkah or Christmas or New Year's, and you want to wear this special dress, and you don't want your stomach to stick out. And I have dresses like that where I put it on. I'm like, oh, heck no, we're not wearing that tonight. I'm bloated. My stomach's sticking out. It looks awful. It looks like a pooch. So you're wanting your stomach a little bit flatter. You're wanting the clothes to fit just a little bit better. That's what this is. It's a little bit of a jump start. And once you have the program, you own the program, you can repeat it at different times. So I've used this when I'm going to go on a vacation and I just want to get rid of a little inflammation. When I come back from vacation and want to get rid of a little inflammation, I've used it before a photo shoot. It is kind of like a mini little peak week. They call it peak week in the competition world, in the bodybuilding world. When you're getting ready to hit the stage, you have a week where you kind of, I always call it baking a cake, which is a terrible thing, analogy to have when you're doing a bodybuilding show. But you know how you're baking a cake and you don't want it to collapse. You want that last little bit. You want to handle that cake in such a way that it stays all pretty and it's not going flat in the oven. Used to make my mom so mad. And then you're going to ice it and put the icing on that cake. That's peak week. It's all of your hard work. And then you kind of dial it in. So you're getting a little bit of a taste of a peak week. It's not harsh by any means, but you're getting a little bit of taste of that. So once again, you can reduce bloat, you can lose some weight. This is something that you can repeat after the holidays to get back on track. It's something you can repeat throughout the year when needed. So I'm going to put the link into the show notes for you to sign up for the holiday shred. If you have questions on this, you can reach me on Instagram at Carol Covino Fitness. That's Carol Covino Fitness. All of this in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening today. And I want to take a moment to say thank you for the DMs I receive on Instagram. You have no idea how much it makes my day when I open up Instagram and there's just a sweet message from one of you ladies saying how much you love the podcast, what you're learning, how much you appreciate it, how much you relate to it. I just love it. So take some time to follow the podcast so that you get notifications each and every week when I do this. And I will also have the link up to my YouTube. I'm gradually gradually dipping my toe into YouTube, and I am putting the podcast episodes up on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch, you can watch. Thank you again. And wherever you are in the world, I wish you every blessing. Bye bye.